Japan and the Netherlands prepare to square off at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, for a pivotal Group F showdown at the FIFA World Cup 2026. This intercontinental clash pits the Samurai Blues' relentless pressing and technical agility against the Dutch team's physical presence, height advantages, and meticulous vertical build-up strategies. Tactical context and high-press dynamics, analyzing Japan's 2026 evolution into a relentless high-pressing unit designed to disrupt European build-up play. Examining the Dutch reliance on backline invitation and how Japan's front three aim to trigger traps in the opening 15 minutes. Identifying the specific zones where Japan's speed aims to negate the Dutch height advantage before the Orange can settle into a rhythm. The tactical narrative of this opening Group F fixture at the FIFA World Cup 2026 hinges on the sheer contrast of each squad's overarching philosophy. Over the last few international cycles, the Japanese national team has undergone a fascinating evolution. No longer content to sit in a reserved mid-block and wait for transitional opportunities, the Samurai Blue have morphed into a relentless, high-pressing unit specifically calibrated to disrupt the deliberate, methodical build-up play typically favored by European football heavyweights. This approach is not chaotic. It is a highly coordinated, synchronized system governed by triggers and traps. When watching Japan play, one immediately notices the intelligence of their forward line. Instead of aimlessly chasing the ball, their front three, typically spearheaded by agile, tactically aware forwards, are tasked with feigning pressure to invite the ball into specific channels before snapping the trap shut. In the opening 15 minutes of this crucial matchup at the AT&T Stadium, Japan's primary objective will be to shatter the rhythm of the Dutch defenders. The Orange, under their seasoned tactical leadership, often rely on their backline to invite opposition forwards up the pitch, aiming to draw the first line of defense out of shape before utilizing the passing ranges of their center backs to break the initial lines of pressure. Japan, however, will be aiming to counter this Dutch reliance. The Japanese coaching staff knows that if the Netherlands is allowed to settle into a comfortable rhythm, their formidable height advantage, particularly on set pieces and crosses from the wide areas, will become nearly impossible to neutralize over a full 90 minutes. Therefore, the battleground of the opening quarter hour will be defined by specific pressing zones. Japan's speed and tactical discipline aim to engage the Dutch center backs precisely in the half spaces, forcing hurried clearances or lateral passes that can be intercepted by the marauding Japanese midfielders. By suffocating the Dutch buildup in these designated zones, the Samurai Blue hope to dictate the terms of engagement and prevent the Orange from ever transitioning from defense into their dangerous, methodical attacking sequences. It is a calculated high-risk, high-reward strategy that requires immense stamina, concentration, and collective understanding. The engine room duel focusing on the direct confrontation between Japan's technical pivots and the physical presence of the Dutch midfield maestros, highlighting how tight space agility allows Japan to escape the initial Dutch counterpress to find outlets on the wings. Assessing the defensive burden on the Netherlands, holding midfielders to track late runs from deep that define the Japanese attacking philosophy. As the game progresses beyond the opening 15 minutes and shifts in the middle third of the pitch, the focus will transition to what promises to be an absolutely fierce engine room duel. This is where the tactical rubber meets the road. Japan's midfield is anchored by technical pivots who possess elite close ball control, an impeccable first touch, and the ability to operate effectively in remarkably tight spaces. They will need every ounce of this agility to escape the initial, suffocating Dutch counterpress. When the Netherlands loses possession, their midfield maestros are instructed to swarm the ball carrier immediately, using their physicality and long strides to suffocate the play before the opposition can look up and find a forward pass. For Japan, the key to unlocking this defensive rigidity lies in rapid 1-2 combinations and quick body feints. By moving the ball rapidly in the center circle, the Japanese pivots can draw the larger, more powerful Dutch midfielders out of position, ultimately creating space to exploit the wide channels. Finding passing outlets on the wings will be absolutely crucial for Japan to stretch the Dutch defensive line and bypass the central congestion. Conversely, this dynamic places a massive, grueling defensive burden on the Netherlands' holding midfielders. These players are tasked with holding down the fort, screening the back four, and, most importantly, tracking the dangerous late runs from deep that have come to define the modern Japanese attacking philosophy. The Samurai Blue rarely rely on a static, traditional number 9. Instead, their central midfielders and inverted wingers are encouraged to charge into the penalty box in waves, creating numerical overloads that can bewilder even the most disciplined European defenses. The Dutch holding midfielders will have to demonstrate supreme positional awareness and anticipation to nullify these late arrivals. If they get drawn too far up the pitch during the Dutch counterpress, they risk leaving massive gaps in the space just in front of their center backs. This delicate, high-stakes game of cat and mouse in the central third will likely determine which team controls the tempo of the match and establishes territorial dominance, dictating the tempo, breaking down the tactical fluidity of the Dutch system and their ability to transition from a defensive block to a lethal vertical attack. Comparing pass completion rates under pressure for both sides to identify who will likely control the game's clock during the second half. Evaluating the impact of substitutions on midfield intensity as fatigue sets in for the high work rate Japanese central trio. Dictating the tempo of a World Cup match is a delicate art, and both nations possess distinct mechanisms for controlling the flow of the game. The Dutch system is celebrated for its tactical fluidity. Under their current managerial setup, the Orange can seamlessly shift from a compact, low defensive block that absorbs pressure to a lethal, rapid vertical attack in the blink of an eye. They achieve this by utilizing the technical capabilities of their fullbacks, who can push high up the pitch to provide width, allowing their inside forwards to drift into dangerous pockets of space between the midfield and defensive lines. When the Netherlands transitions into this attacking phase, their primary goal is to bypass the middle of the pitch entirely, delivering incisive diagonal balls to their pacey wingers or target men. This verticality means that the Dutch can threaten to score even if they have spent long stretches of the game without the ball. As the clock ticks into the second half, the battle for control will largely be defined by a statistical analysis of pass completion rates under pressure. Controlling the game's clock in the latter stages requires players who can retain possession, relieve pressure on their backlines, and slow down the tempo of the match when necessary. Comparing the pass completion rates under pressure for both sides will reveal which team is actually executing their game plan effectively. If Japan's high work rate central trio begins to see their passing accuracy drop under sustained Dutch pressure, the Netherlands will likely seize control of the tempo, forcing the Samurai Blue to chase the game and expend valuable energy. However, if Japan maintains a high pass completion percentage, it means they are successfully bypassing the Dutch press, frustrating the European side, and managing the tempo to their liking. This battle for tempo is heavily dependent on squad depth and the impact of substitutions. As fatigue invariably sets in for the high work rate Japanese central trio, the manager will be forced to look to the bench to maintain that crucial midfield intensity. The incoming substitutes will need to offer the same level of tactical discipline and defensive work rate, or the Japanese defensive structure risks fracturing entirely under sustained Dutch territorial dominance in the dying embers of the match. Data simulation and squad depth reviewing performance metrics from the most recent international windows to project XG outcomes for this specific matchup. Analyzing the impact of the bench depth for both nations and how late-game tactical shifts historically swing these high-stakes encounters. Using AI-driven simulations to predict which side's defensive structure is more likely to fracture during sustained periods of territorial dominance. When projecting the outcome of such a complex, multifaceted intercontinental clash, delving into data simulation and evaluating squad depth becomes absolutely paramount. Recent performance metrics from the most recent international windows and qualifying matches provide a treasure trove of information regarding how these two teams will match up statistically. Analyzing the expected goals, XG outcomes for this specific matchup suggests an intriguing dynamic. The Netherlands consistently post high XG figures against compact defensive blocks due to their physical dominance in the air and the sheer individual quality of their attacking forwards in the final third. On the other hand, Japan's XG metrics are heavily reliant on shot-creating actions originating from wide overloads and quick transitional play, making their attacking output extremely efficient, but sometimes volume-dependent. Statistical models indicate that if Japan can limit the Netherlands to a low XG total in the first half, the probability of a Japanese upset increases exponentially as the game wears on. However, squad depth is where the European giants traditionally hold a distinct advantage. The Dutch manager possesses the luxury of calling upon elite, game-changing talent from the bench, allowing the team to shift from a possession-based approach to a more direct, physically imposing 4-4-2 or 3-5-2 system in the dying minutes. These late-game tactical shifts have historically been the undoing of high-pressing, less deep squads at the FIFA World Cup. Japan, while boasting a talented roster of technically gifted players, particularly those plying their trade in the top European leagues, relies so heavily on their starting specific tactical synchronicity that bringing on substitutes can sometimes disrupt their defensive shape. To gain further insight into the probable dynamics of the match, advanced AI-driven simulations were utilized to run this fixture thousands of times under various scenarios. The simulations overwhelmingly point to a fascinating late-game vulnerability for both sides, depending on the game state. If the Netherlands dominates territorial possession for sustained periods, their defensive line is often pushed dangerously high up the pitch to compress the game. The AI simulations reveal that during these prolonged phases of dominance, the Dutch defensive structure is highly susceptible to the blistering counterattacking speed of the Japanese wingers. Conversely, if Japan tires and is forced into a low block, the sheer physical and aerial dominance of the Dutch target men is projected to fracture the Japanese penalty box resilience, leading to high-quality scoring opportunities for the European side. Final score prediction and match verdict, synthesizing the tactical breakdown into a definitive scoreline prediction based on current squad form and historical head-to-head patterns. Isolating the X-factor player from each squad whose individual brilliance is most likely to break the projected tactical stalemate. Providing a final summary of why this specific midfield battle determines the ultimate winner of this intercontinental clash. Synthesizing this comprehensive tactical breakdown, current squad form, and historical head-to-head patterns, the match between Japan and the Netherlands at the AT&T Stadium is poised to be a tactical masterpiece and an absolute thriller for the fans. Historical matchups between these two proud footballing nations have always been tightly contested affairs, often decided by a singular moment of individual brilliance or a minor tactical misstep. Considering the evolution of the Japanese squad into a fierce, high-pressing unit and the Netherlands' renowned tactical fluidity and vertical attacking prowess, the match is projected to be a tense, high-stakes stalemate for the majority of the regulation 90 minutes. However, the game will ultimately be decided in the pivotal central third of the pitch. The midfield battle serves as the absolute fulcrum of this intercontinental clash. If Japan's technical pivots can successfully dictate the tempo, bypass the initial Dutch counterpress, and starve the Dutch attack of service, the Samurai Blue have a clear path to securing a historic result. Conversely, if the physical power and passing range of the Dutch midfield maestros allow them to control the tempo, pin Japan in their own half, and feed their pacey wingers, the Netherlands will inevitably break through the Japanese defensive lines. Ultimately, the match verdict points to a narrow, hard-fought 2-1 victory for the Netherlands. While Japan's tactical discipline and high-pressing philosophy will cause massive structural headaches for the Orange, the sheer depth of the Dutch squad and their undeniable physical dominance in the latter stages of the game will likely prove to be the deciding factors. The match is expected to be broken open by an X-factor player from each squad who possesses the individual brilliance to shatter a projected tactical stalemate. For the Netherlands, the X-factor is undoubtedly their elite, playmaking midfielder whose vision, ability to thread inch-perfect vertical passes, and capacity to score from distance can change the complexion of the game in a single second. For Japan, the X factor lies in their explosive, pacey winger, whose blistering speed in the wide channels, dribbling ability, and clinical finishing on the counterattack will be the ultimate weapon against a high-line Dutch defense. In the end, the sheer resilience of the Dutch midfield, combined with their ability to adapt and introduce game-changing substitutes, will tip the scales in their favor.